Hey everyone, welcome back to another AMAG Asks. Really excited about this one. Today I'm joined by Elli and Candice, two incredible leaders in our industry who I'm lucky to share a lot of networks with. We cross paths both personally and professionally, and well, I'll let them introduce themselves here in a second, but we really just wanted to have a little bit more of a long form conversation today on the people side of the business, workforce development, talent, and then another thing that's not often I've found talked about, or as much as we'd like to see talked about, are the obstacles in the way of developing our people, and then specific people within those people, if you will. So before I start rambling right off the bat, let's let these two lovely ladies introduce themselves. Candice, I'll start with you.
I'm Candice Aragon. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at the PSA Network. We are a cooperative of systems integrators, so they purchase their product through us in exchange for obviously access to amazing technology partners like AMAG, but also services, education, things of that nature. So I've been with the organization for about 6 years now. I came in as the Director of Marketing and have grown through the ranks here at PSA. I'm not from the industry. I came from banking before this, so really different background, and it's been a fun journey, needless to say, as I've kind of grown and gotten to know people in the industry.
I'm Dr. Elli Reges. I'm the Director of Learning and Development for Security Industry Association. I've also been with them for about 6 years. I didn't realize we kind of came into our current roles around the same time, Candice. But in that capacity, I support all of our training, certification, and workforce development initiatives. And I also serve as a staff liaison to our Women in Security Forum. And for anyone listening who may not be familiar with SIA, we're the premier trade association for the industry, representing security manufacturers, technology providers, integrators, consultants, and even end users. So we provide a variety of resources from government advocacy to research reports, learning and development, and are the premier sponsor of ISC events. So you see us there. But before I joined SIA, I was the Director of Certifications and Compliance for the National Center for Spectator Sport Safety and Security. That's where our paths originally crossed, Kyle, in a former life. So I've been in security for over 10 years, but I made a switch working primarily with the first responder community and law enforcement and emergency managers, some venue directors of sport facilities and entertainment venues, and then coming into SIA, really working on the enterprise side, learning a lot more about the technology solutions that support overall security operations.
Yeah, so you were in security, you've been in security kind of in a broader sense for 10 years. Candice, interested in this for you, because I'm a security lifer. For better or for worse, I haven't known anything else, so I don't have perspective on this. You mentioned you came from banking. What were some of your first impressions of our industry when making that transition?
So I did come, I worked at credit unions. I led marketing teams in the credit union industry for about 5 or 6 years. And before that, I did public relations at realtor.com for a number of years. So I kind of come more from the real estate financial services, which are also like very male dominated, a little more vanilla sometimes in the diversity that you're going to get, but certainly a lot more women in banking. So I do think that, when I entered the scene of security and started attending conferences, especially my first ISC West, it was like, wow, this is really stark. And my team would joke about it too. They'd be like, wait till you go to a security event. Like there will never be a line at the women's bathroom, So there are, things like that you realize. But I will say, in just 6 years, it's been amazing how much it's changed. So I do see a lot of positive movement on that front. But yeah, at the beginning, it was definitely a little bit of culture shock.
I think it's a pretty low bar to clear when we're celebrating kind of where we're at right now, but certainly celebrating progress is worth celebrating. Why don't we pivot there for a second? Because I know you both are involved in obviously a lot of our professional development efforts from a female leadership effort for women in security. Um, just maybe start with you, Ellie, on kind of where we're at and what else you'd like to see, how you'd like to see us progress, and also probably because this will be helpful. It's just for someone who's watching this and may not know how to get involved. What are some of the ways they can do that?
So a little bit of background, SIA's Women's Security Forum was founded in 2018, really just as a community and a host of networking events. So we would piggyback off of ISC West, ISC East, host breakfasts for people to come together and network. But we've really expanded that with the hard work of a lot of really great leaders. Alice DeSanto is the current chair, Candice, in her capacity, as well as Cassia Hansen, Maureen Carlo, and a few others. But they've really built in some programs that support women in their careers at any point in their career. So that includes scholarship programs, our Power 100, where we recognize 100 women who are doing amazing things across the industry. We have our annual conference, which is going into its third year, Security Lead Her, which we deliver in conjunction with ASIS. So then you get that cross-pollination of both practitioners and solution providers coming together to kind of share in both business discussions, but a lot on leadership and career development as well. And then kind of behind the scenes on some of the other programs that we're working on, there's a lot of momentum behind some career pathways for recruitment purposes, recruiting more women into technical roles within the industry, showcasing the different career paths that are available, facilitating professional development. So, we have our scholarship program, but even beyond that, supporting women who want to maybe attend industry events whose companies, aren't supporting that financially, or career coaching and other training opportunities. Was there anything I forgot to mention that we kind of had on that?
No, that's great. Candice, any additional thoughts?
2025 is an exciting year for the Women in Security Forum. We have some even more initiatives coming out. We've been doing something called Propel Her that is specifically focused around female student athletes and kind of all of the benefits that they could bring to the workforce and exposing them to careers in security. So Alice DeSanto, our chair, has been doing some work at the University of Louisville, and we're partnering with other, professional sports teams that we're hoping to get inroads with so that we can kind of expose them to careers in security. But also you think about all of the benefits that a student athlete would bring to our industry as well. So thinking about recruiting in unique places, just 2018, it feels like I can't believe the Women in Security Forum only started in 2018, but there has been so much great momentum from obviously the women that are leading it, but also the male allies that are supporting it. So we are trying to highlight a lot of those stories this year too, and not just like, oh, I think Kyle's a really great guy. It's like, this is where Kyle shows up to support the women on his team and the women in the industry. And so we're going to be highlighting and showcasing those stories this year as well, and trying to keep that initiative going forward. And we're also putting our money where our mouth is at the Women in Security Forum. We have gotten some funding from the Security Industry Association and are working on career coaching and coffee talks and scholarships for women to attend events or have professional development in the industry. Because it's once you build that network, I mean, you go to your first event in security and you never want to leave. You're like, this is where I belong. So we have to help people find their pack of people to run with.
I love that. And we can kind of take we can take a step out even further now. If we talk about sort of just new talent in our space in general, I always have to caveat this with I probably had blinders on when talent wasn't really my responsibility. For a long time in my career, I was an individual contributor and then moved into leadership roles, which were revenue driven. And so it's really just head down on the day to day. So maybe things were happening 17 years ago when I started in this, and I wasn't paying attention. But my assumption is that we've actually made some really significant strides in the last 5 years. It just feels like we're talking about it more. It feels like the new entries in our space are demanding it. It feels like new talent demanding it, but also new companies, right? It's not the same 20 companies that have basically been running the space for the last 50 years. We're having a ton of near neighbors come in or new entries for the first time, and the way that they run their business and the way that they think about talent development and or recruitment is probably different than a lot of traditional security players. What have you both seen? Elli, I'll start with you. What have you both seen kind of in this, I'll call it a people evolution here over the last, 5 years anyways?
Well, certainly being talked about at the forefront of every like industry event, workforce development, but what that means to each company can be very different. So I think, we certainly struggle in recruitment. There's a shortage of qualified or skilled talent, and that's across, trades. So getting more people to come into the trades is part of it. I think, and we talk about this, we're like, we need to get away, and what we're trying to do is get away from that antiquated view of like guards, gates, and guns, and be thought of as more technology focused and mission driven in what we do to protect people, property, and assets, because it's very exciting. And once you're like in it, you see it and you understand it. But I would say most of us probably thought law enforcement, and a security guard with guard on the back of his t-shirt before you actually get in and see everything else that goes into supporting that kind of event. But so it's talked about. I think recruitment is a big piece of it. I think that one of our biggest pain points is how we develop people once we get them in the industry, once we get them in the door. Everyone wants a golden goose of someone with experience who then, is going to be trained up in 6 weeks and I can put them in the field. And it just doesn't happen that way. But there's a lot of really great, motivated people who want the opportunity to learn, who may not have had access to formal education. But if given the opportunity and you invest in them, mentor them, provide them with training and resources, that they can grow with your organization long term. And so my kind of biggest point of encouragement for companies right now is to formalize the process around employee onboarding and employee development, so you can keep someone a lot longer, which ends up saving you money in terms of retention.
And it's not as daunting as it used to be. I mean, I think to not to do the obvious plug, but when I look at what we use SIA for, and that used to be something that I would have to do in-house. So I'd have to have not only someone leading a learning and development team, but in addition to that, they would have to be doing all the content creation. They'd have to be pulling all the different sources. And when you have industry organizations that are now compiling that information, so at least the ground level of the educational process can be handled essentially by a third party, if you will. It takes a lot of that burden off the hiring manager, who in many cases, Candice, I think about some of your integrators, right? They may not have a dedicated learning and development person. I mean, it's just, it may not be in their cards at this time. So therefore, that trainer, if you will, is also the sales manager, or is also it's the hiring manager, right? And it's not that they don't want to do it; it's that other things kind of get in the way. So I don't know. What are your thoughts there, Candice?
Yeah, I mean, so we do voice of customer surveys with our integrators, right? And we ask them like, what are the biggest benefits that you get out of PSA? And you would assume that they would say like the credit terms that you're giving us, like the financial benefits and discounts, access, like, and what they repeatedly say over and over again by a majority is the networking opportunities with the other systems integrators. And what gets to the heart of this is we have a people committee, for instance, that is mostly HR professionals from other systems integrators. And they are wearing a lot of hats, like you said. Sometimes they are the marketing team, the HR team. They have lots of other responsibilities going on. But here they get to come together with other integrators. Some of them have more resources, but they get to work together on here's what we have. And PSA supplements that as well. We have an online learning management system. We build career paths for them. So those kind of resources are what people are looking for. And to your point, they're out there. It's just knowing where to find them that I think people struggle with.
Yeah, I love that. All right, here's one that's for me it's kind of it's exciting to talk about, but you two are in it a little bit more than I am. So we're excited about kind of where we've come from, but I would assume if you both are like me, you're very excited about where we're going. In general, as you look at our industry, and we've talked a little bit here briefly today about kind of the people within it and the tools that are at their disposal, how do you think this thing looks in 3-5 years? I mean, what gets you most excited about the industry we're building and the way that we're supporting the people within it? And sorry, either one of you can start with that. Candice, I'll go with you first.
Happy to hop in. And you kind of touched on this at the beginning with Elli about asking about education events. Elli and I both get really lucky in that we get to curate a lot of the industry education. So when I started introducing kind of these diversity topics at PSA Tech and our other events, it was very much like, here's why a seat at the table is important. Very base level, helping people understand one is not enough. Like, let's not like fall into tokenism. And now as time goes on and we're continuing to progress, we're getting to go deeper and deeper in these conversations about what does diversity really look like? We're not just checking the box, and how do we build long-term sustainable programs? So I'm really excited about that. I mean, Lead Her, you should absolutely go this year for the record, Kyle. The first year, we had about 200 people, Elli, is that right? And then we doubled in size to the next year. And it's astounding when you're in a room with that many women in this industry and you're seeing these powerhouse women, it gives you hope that we really are about to make a big significant change, and that the tipping point is coming. So I would say that those are the things that I get most excited about when I'm thinking about the career or the trajectory. But also, Elli and I've chatted about this before, of a fun TikTok campaign or something of really amazing, cool, hip women that are working the technical roles. Like, how do we celebrate those voices too and say that women aren't just the marketing person or the HR person, but really a lot more of those technical roles as well. So I think that there's more to be done there, but we haven't quite cracked that egg yet.
I will say, Elli, before you jump in with the Lead Her, it just from peer to peer with my network, and I'm lucky enough to have a ton of really great mentors, a lot of whom are now leading a lot of the companies in this industry. Person to person is probably the event that they are most impressed with. And that's not to take anything away from all the other events that we all share. But I think to your point, Candice, the momentum and excitement around that event is very, hopefully is a microcosm of the momentum and the excitement around female leadership within our space.
Yeah, I think, Candice and I are certainly very lucky because we're at a lot of large industry events where you see, how many women are really in our field. But on the day-to-day, when you might be the only technician at your company or the only woman in your office, it can feel very isolating. So I think that's an important gap that Security Lead Her fills, so that you kind of find your tribe outside of, your office in Akron, Ohio. So it brings it together, makes you part of a larger community that you can kind of keep tuned in with throughout the year. And I also think, like Candice said, highlighting some of these conversations that I think not only as women, but I think struggles of young professionals. Like Kyle, if you and I were sitting at a table at ISC West, I would chat with you about like maybe some of the challenges I ran into this day, that day, and lament. But we're able to then bring those to the stage and share, real personal struggles and be vulnerable and, establish a level of understanding that our male counterparts may not see. And everything's been really well received. So I think that it has been very important and will continue to grow, and it'll grow beyond outside of Lead Her and PSA Tech and ISC West, and hopefully into offices where people are, struggling. I don't want to say struggling, but dealing with them day to day and figuring out productive solutions.
I wanted to touch on that point a little further because we had something interesting happen at Security Lead Her this past year where in a Q&A, a woman was like clearly dealing with a really heavy issue of sexual harassment and she like has nobody to help her. And so it kind of comes out there because I think she feels comfortable in the room of saying like, what am I supposed to do about this? And I've seen that on the PSA Women's Committee too, right? To Elli's point, when you're alone in your office and you have no other women around you and you're kind of having to put up with the good old boy behavior, you just like take it on the chin and go on. But then in these small groups like the PSA Women's Committee, you can talk about like, this has happened to me. And you have a group that's like, here's a solution for that, or here's how you should handle that. Or even just like, I'm sorry, that sucks that that's the situation that you're in. And we saw that kind of happen at Lead Her a little bit too. And I think that's some of the magic of it is like having that safety net to just get to be yourself and not feel like you just kind of have to maybe like suck it up or keep it quiet.
Yeah, I love that. It's a fantastic example. And I think it also points to, at least hopefully, I know there's a lot of important voices championing this idea right now, which is one that I support strongly. In our industry, we serve a higher cause, right? In a lot of industries, you have pure play competition, and I'm all for that, right? I get it. But in our industry, even when I lose, if my competitor is doing the right job, then someone's being protected. Someone hopefully is being protected. Someone's risk is being mitigated. We as an industry have an impact, even if maybe AMAG, for instance, does not. I think in the same regard to what you just sort of illustrated there, Candice, is that we all belong to this broader community as a security professional, which I do feel is different than other industries. Not every industry can say that on a whole we support each other. Some are just purely competitive. And so I love the idea, and it kind of takes us full circle to where we started the conversation, to tapping into that broader network. Because as much as we may compete, or I may, compete from day to day with some of my peers, I still want to see them succeed. And so I want to see their people succeed as well. And to your point, Candice, if your individual organization doesn't have the infrastructure to support, or maybe doesn't have the initiative to support, the broader industry is saying to that same person, yeah, but we're here. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I could take this and we could go for 40 more minutes easily. We could go for 4 more hours. I think for me, what would be really important for our viewers of this podcast is understand is maybe from both of you, Elli, I'll start with you, how to get started, because there's plenty of people who are already actively engaged. We know many of them, but I think what's most interesting for me, and really this is for anyone, right? We spent a lot of time talking today about our female leaders. We spent a lot of time talking about kind of young professionals, but this is just people, just new entries into the space, anything like that. So I guess, Elli, just some tips for people just getting into the space, trying to understand which way is up, and wanting to tap into this incredible community of security professionals.
So I would say SIA has a couple of different communities that you can sign up to join, even as a non-member, just being part of the community. So we have our RISE group for young professionals, our Women in Security Forum, and our newly launched Veterans in Security group. So if you go to the SIA website, there's under professional communities, there's a link where you can sign up to receive communications on all of the events and other programs that are available and coming out in 2025. So that is certainly a good place to start and get looped in with your network. If you're just passionate and looking to engage on technical topics, SIA has a lot of committees where we accept volunteers to contribute to some of those programs and projects. I personally always am looking for speakers and subject matter experts. So if you are a thought leader or very passionate about a topic that's relevant to our industry, from workforce development to, mobile credentials, whatever that is, please reach out to me. We'd love to highlight you and feature your expertise to help educate the greater industry at some of our events throughout the year.
I'd say, look at the resources that you have available. Like I said, PSA has, if you're a PSA integrator, we've got these various committees. We have a young professionals committee, a women's committee. We have subject matter expertise committees that you can join and find some like-minded people. Beg your boss. We'll help you figure out how to write the letter to do it, to attend Accelerize or Lead Her or PSA Tech. We offer a fellowship program. So you can apply to get a scholarship to have your attendance at PSA Tech paid for, so that you can kind of come and meet people in person and grow your network. But also LinkedIn. LinkedIn is very powerful in our industry. I know it's, one of the more dated social media channels, but for this industry, it's a really great way to connect with people and learn. Reach out to me if you don't know where to plug in and you're not at all involved with PSA. I don't care. I'm happy to make connections with others in the industry. You can find me on LinkedIn, Candice Aragon. And I'm also happy to meet with you and connect, find the helpers, right? Look for mentors or people that can really help you grow your career. And then Elli and I would be remiss if we didn't plug the SIA and PSA security careers guide, so that you can learn about all the opportunities and see not just the scope of the industry, but for specific careers, what's the career path? What's the pay to be expected? What's the work-life balance? What prerequisites do I need? It really helps lay out a nice path to show you what the opportunity here is in the industry.
I love that. Well, I will say LinkedIn, if it's dated, then I'm dated, because I live on LinkedIn. I love it. I think we have from and maybe it's because the majority of my network is within security. I don't know what other industries are like on LinkedIn, but man, we have an active community.
We do.
And I learn a lot every day just kind of scrolling. So, well, would be remiss if I didn't thank both of you for your roles in kind of driving us forward as an industry. Really appreciate the time today, and thanks for all you do.
No, thanks for having us, Kyle.